I walked into my engagement party expecting love and celebration, until I saw my fiancé holding hands with someone else, his secret fiancé. I was so excited. Months of planning, dress fittings, cake tastings, and seating arrangements had led to this night, my engagement party. Everything was perfect, or at least I thought it would be. My friends were buzzing around, laughing, complimenting my dress, and taking endless pictures. My parents looked proud. My heart was racing, and my fiancé Daniel was standing there with that charming smile of his, holding my hand like I was the only person in the room. But then I saw it. A flicker of movement near the other side of the room. A whisper, a glance between Daniel and someone else. My stomach dropped instantly. It couldn't be. Not tonight. Not in front of everyone. I blinked, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe it was a friend, maybe just my imagination. I forced a smile, laughed at a joke my cousin made, but my eyes kept darting back. And then I saw it again. Daniel, leaning a little too close, whispering something to a woman I didn't know. My heart skipped. Something in that moment didn't feel right. My hands grew clammy, my chest tightened, and suddenly all the excitement, all the joy I'd been feeling vanished. I tried to calm myself. Maybe it's innocent. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm imagining things. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. The way he was looking at her, the subtle touch of her hand, it was wrong. Too intimate, too secretive. I excused myself to the bathroom, heart pounding, and tried to breathe. I replayed everything in my mind. The way he had seemed unusually tense lately, the sudden phone calls he would take outside, the small lies I'd brushed off. And now, seeing him here, smiling at someone else like I didn't exist, it all made sense. I didn't know what to do. Should I confront him now, in front of everyone? Or wait, gather proof? My emotions were a storm. Anger, betrayal, sadness, disbelief. Tears threatened to spill, but I refused to let them. Not yet. I needed to be in control. When I returned to the party, I watched him from across the room. The whispers were louder now. I could see the small group of guests noticing too. And then he turned, smiling at me like everything was normal. My stomach twisted. How could he look so calm? How could he pretend nothing was happening while I was dying inside? I realized in that moment that this night, this beautiful celebration, had just become the most important night of my life. Not for happiness, but for truth. And I promised myself, no matter what, I would find out exactly what Daniel was hiding, and I would expose him, even if it meant shaking the entire room. Have you ever had a gut feeling that someone close to you was hiding a huge secret? How did you react? I couldn't focus on the party anymore. Every laugh, every toast, every clinking glass felt like it was happening in a different world, a world I wasn't part of. My eyes kept finding Daniel and her. She was stunning, sure, but it wasn't just that. It was the way he looked at her, the way they leaned toward each other as if the rest of the room didn't exist. My chest tightened with a mix of fear and anger. I decided I had to know for sure. I needed proof. My hands were shaking, but I picked up my phone, pretending to text a friend as I moved closer, weaving through the crowd. I caught snippets of their conversation. Her laugh was soft, flirtatious, and then I heard it. Daniel whispering, I can't wait for us. Soon everyone will know everything froze. My heart dropped to my stomach. Us? That wasn't just a friend. That wasn't casual. That was engagement-level intimacy. My mind reeled. He couldn't be serious. He couldn't be engaged to her. Not me. Not now. I had to see for myself. I needed undeniable evidence. I edged closer, pretending to check my hair in a nearby mirror while subtly watching them. And then I saw it. Her hand slipped over his, a small but unmistakable gesture, and a ring glinted in the soft lighting. My world tilted. My fiancé, the man I was supposed to be marrying, was secretly engaged to someone else. I wanted to scream, to collapse, to run, but instead I clenched my jaw, my hands balling into fists. I couldn't let this destroy me in front of everyone. Not yet. I needed to act smart. I needed to expose him. And I needed everyone to know the truth. I stepped back, taking a deep breath. My mind raced through the possibilities. Should I confront him privately first, or should I make it public, right here, right now? The idea of him lying in front of everyone made my blood boil. The thought of keeping quiet made me feel sick. I found a quiet corner and texted my closest friend, Laura, a simple message. He's engaged to someone else. Come quick. Her reply came instantly. OMG. Stay calm. I'll be there. Minutes felt like hours. I kept my eyes on him, pretending to chat with other guests while my mind plotted my next move. When Laura arrived, she gave me a reassuring nod. No words were needed. We both knew what had to happen. I felt a surge of adrenaline. The room was full of people, all smiling, all celebrating, oblivious to the betrayal unfolding in front of them. My heart raced, my palms sweated, and yet deep inside, I knew I had power. I had the truth. And soon everyone would know too. This wasn't just an engagement party anymore. It was a stage, and Daniel was about to be exposed. If you discovered your partner was secretly engaged to someone else, would you confront them immediately or wait for the perfect moment to expose them? The room felt suddenly smaller, like the walls were closing in. Every laugh, every toast, every cheer felt like it was directed at me, mocking me. I could feel Daniel's eyes on me as I moved closer, pretending to mingle, while Laura stayed a step behind, silently supporting me. I took a deep breath and walked straight toward him, ignoring the whispers that started to ripple through the crowd. Guests were beginning to notice the tension. I could see curiosity and confusion in their eyes. Perfect. They were about to witness the truth. Daniel, I said, my voice louder than I intended. The chatter in the room quieted immediately. People turned, sensing drama. I felt the adrenaline surge through me. We need to talk. His smile faltered. For a brief moment, I saw panic in his eyes. I knew I had him. I didn't even need to yell. My calm, controlled fury was enough to make him sweat. He stammered, looking around, realizing people were staring. Do you want to explain why you're holding hands with someone else in my engagement party? I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. And maybe you'd like to explain that ring? I held my hand out, pointing subtly toward her hand on his. The glint of the engagement band caught the light like a knife to my chest. The room fell silent. Gasps echoed around us. My friends whispered, Parents widened their eyes, and even distant relatives turned to see what was happening. Daniel's fiancée-to-be, the woman I'd seen with him, froze, her face draining of color. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. No, don't bother lying. Everyone can see the truth now. You were engaged to her the whole time, and I was just a fool, believing every word you said, the crowd murmured. Phones were already out, recording, documenting. Social media notifications would explode in seconds. I felt a surge of satisfaction, not just for myself, but for exposing the betrayal in front of everyone. Daniel tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled back, stepping closer to Laura for support. Stay away from me. Don't touch me, and don't even think about explaining. Your actions speak louder than your words. I could see him shrinking, realizing he had lost control of the room. His carefully constructed lies, his charm, his manipulations, all gone in one moment. The look on his face was priceless. Shock, embarrassment, panic. I turned to the crowd, holding my head high. Let this be a lesson, I said, my voice strong and clear. No one should ever betray the people they claim to love. And tonight, the truth is out. Judge him as you will. Whispers grew louder. People nodded, some gasped, and a few approached me to express sympathy. The night I thought would celebrate love had turned into a public revelation, but I felt stronger than ever. I had taken control, I had spoken my truth, and I refused to let betrayal define me. Have you ever publicly confronted someone who betrayed you? Did it feel empowering or terrifying? The room was buzzing now, not with laughter or celebration, but with whispers, shocked murmurs, and pointed glances. People were gathering, forming small clusters, all eyes on Daniel and the other woman. I could see his panic growing, the confidence he had carried into the night crumbling with every passing second. I felt a strange mix of emotions, anger, betrayal, and strangely, relief. The truth was out. He couldn't charm or manipulate his way out of this anymore. But the fallout was immediate. My parents looked horrified, trying to process what had just happened. My friends gathered around me, offering supportive hugs and words of encouragement. Laura whispered in my ear, "You did the right thing. He can't get away with this." I nodded, trying to steady my racing heart. Even though the attention was intense, I felt empowered. I had taken control of the situation, and I refused to let him intimidate me. Daniel tried to speak, his voice shaky. Everyone, wait, I cut him off, raising a hand. No, Daniel. You lied to me, to all of us. You don't get to explain now. The truth speaks louder than your words. The room murmured in agreement. Some people looked shocked, some angry, and a few whispered in disbelief. It was surreal. I had imagined confronting him privately, maybe even quietly leaving the party, but standing here, publicly exposing his betrayal, felt powerful. Then his fiancée, the woman I hadn't even known about, stepped forward. She looked as stunned as he did, her eyes wide. I didn't know he was engaged to you, she stammered. My chest tightened. How could she not know? But it didn't matter. The damage was done. The secrets were out. The carefully constructed facade of their double engagement had collapsed. Some guests approached Daniel, demanding explanations, while others expressed sympathy toward me. I stayed calm, holding my head high. Every whisper, every sympathetic glance toward me reinforced the fact that I'd done the right thing. My parents pulled me aside for a quick hug. We're proud of you, my mom said quietly. You handled it perfectly. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Pride and heartbreak collided in a way I hadn't expected. I had lost trust in someone I loved, but I had gained clarity and strength in myself. Meanwhile, Daniel tried desperately to regain composure. He fumbled through apologies, explanations, and pleas, but no one listened. The night had shifted irreversibly. I realized that nothing he could say would undo the betrayal or erase the humiliation he had brought upon himself. As I moved back into the crowd, I felt the weight lift slightly from my shoulders. The party, once a symbol of celebration and love, had become a stage for truth and empowerment. And while the night would forever carry the memory of heartbreak, it also marked the beginning of reclaiming control over my life. Have you ever had a public confrontation with someone who betrayed you? How did the people around you react? After the party, the adrenaline finally started to fade, leaving a strange emptiness behind. I was surrounded by friends and family who had witnessed the confrontation, but I felt oddly alone. Daniel's betrayal had hit me harder than I expected, not just because of what he did, but because I had trusted him completely. And that trust had been shattered in front of everyone. At home later that night, I sat on my bed, replaying every moment in my head. The whispers, the stares, the shocked faces. It all felt surreal. I tried to focus on the support I had received, but my mind kept drifting back to him. How could he do this? How could he treat me like I was nothing while secretly planning his life with someone else? My phone buzzed constantly. Messages from friends checking if I was okay, from family offering comfort, and even a few from people I barely knew who had heard about the party. I read each one, feeling the warmth of support but also the sting of embarrassment. The whole engagement, the so-called celebration, had turned into a scandal, and somehow I was at the center of it. Laura sat next to me, her presence grounding me. You were incredible tonight, she said. I've never seen anyone handle betrayal like that. You didn't scream, you didn't cry, you took control. I shook my head. I don't feel incredible. I feel numb. Angry, yes, but mostly, I just feel betrayed. She nodded. I know. And it's okay to feel that way. But you didn't let him humiliate you completely. You exposed him and stood your ground. That's powerful. Her words sank in slowly. She was right. I had faced one of the most humiliating moments of my life head on. I had made a choice to speak my truth rather than let him continue hiding behind lies, and in that, there was strength. I thought about the future. Could I ever trust someone again? Could I even consider love after this? The questions swirled in my mind like a storm, and I realized I didn't have answers yet. All I knew was that I needed time. Time to heal, time to process, time to reclaim my confidence in my life. The next morning, I woke up to messages from everyone who had attended the party. Most expressed shock and sympathy, some offered advice, and a few congratulated me for handling the situation publicly. The overwhelming support made me realize something important. Betrayal could break trust, but it couldn't break me. As I sipped my coffee, I made a decision. I wouldn't let Daniel's actions define me or dictate my happiness. He had made his choice, and I had made mine. I would move forward, stronger and wiser. Even though my heart ached, I felt a sense of clarity for the first time. This was the end of one chapter, a painful, shocking, humbling chapter, and the beginning of a new one, where I would rebuild myself on my own terms. After facing betrayal, have you ever had to rebuild your life from scratch? How did you find your strength? Days passed, but the aftershocks of the engagement party didn't fade. Everywhere I went, people whispered, some offering sympathy, others curiosity, and a few judgment. Even though Daniel had tried to disappear from social media, the footage and photos from the party had gone viral among our friends and family. My life felt exposed, but strangely, I no longer felt powerless. I spent hours reflecting on everything, our relationship, his lies, the secret fiancé, the countless red flags I had ignored. It was like peeling back layers of a mask I hadn't realized I had been wearing. I had loved him blindly, trusted him fully, and for what? A facade, a double life. Laura and I went for a walk one afternoon, trying to escape the gossip and the notifications. Do you ever wonder how he could do that? I asked quietly, staring at the pavement. How he could pretend to love me and still be engaged to someone else? She shook her head. Some people are selfish, manipulative. You can't change them. You can only control how you respond. Her words struck a chord. I realized that yes, I couldn't change Daniel, but I could shape my own life. I didn't have to carry his betrayal forever. I could take this pain and turn it into something empowering. Even within our friend circle, dynamics had shifted. Friends who had been close to him now avoided him. People who had doubted me were now on my side. I felt a strange sense of validation, not just for exposing him, but for trusting my instincts when something felt wrong. My intuition had been right all along, but the emotional fallout was still real. Every time I walked past his apartment or saw his name online, my stomach twisted. The betrayal wasn't just about him. It was about the illusion I had believed, the future I had imagined, and the memories I had invested in. Those pieces of my heart had been bruised, and healing felt like a slow, complicated process. I decided to take control of the narrative. I reached out to a few close friends to share my story in my own words rather than letting gossip define it. Talking about it, admitting my hurt, my anger, my shock, it was therapeutic. I could feel myself reclaiming power piece by piece. At night, when the world was quiet, I allowed myself to feel the betrayal fully, the sadness, the heartbreak, the disbelief. But I also reminded myself of one truth. I had survived it. I had faced public humiliation, lied to by someone I trusted, and yet here I was, standing, breathing, and slowly finding my way back. I realized the most important lesson of all: betrayal can't take away your strength unless you let it. I wouldn't let Daniel's choices define me, and I wouldn't let fear or embarrassment stop me from moving forward. My life was mine to rebuild, and I was ready to reclaim it. Have you ever had to reclaim your life after someone you trusted betrayed you? How did you regain your confidence and strength? Weeks had passed since the engagement party, but the fallout was still evident. Friends and family were adjusting to the new reality, and Daniel had become almost a ghost in our social circles. The whispers had faded, but there was still tension, the kind that lingers after betrayal. I realized it was time to take control of not just my emotions, but also my boundaries. I started by setting clear limits with people who had been close to him. Some of his friends tried to reach out, awkwardly apologizing or trying to justify his actions. I listened, nodded, and firmly told them that my priority was my own peace. I need space, I said. I'm not interested in revisiting this drama. Most understood, though a few were clearly uncomfortable. That was fine. I wasn't looking to please anyone anymore. At work and in social circles, I began asserting myself in ways I hadn't before. Invitations and conversations that included Daniel or references to him were politely declined. I refused to let his betrayal continue to dictate my life. Each small act of reclaiming control felt empowering. It wasn't just about avoiding him. It was about reinforcing that my boundaries mattered. Family gatherings were challenging. Relatives who had known about the party would bring it up subtly, with sympathetic glances or soft murmurs. At first, I felt embarrassed, but I quickly realized I could shape these interactions too. I began acknowledging the truth calmly, never apologizing for the confrontation, and redirecting conversations toward my own life and plans. The embarrassment gradually gave way to quiet confidence. Laura became my anchor during this time. We started planning little outings, dinners, and even weekend trips just to remind me that life could be joyful again. It wasn't about distractions. It was about rebuilding a sense of normalcy and reclaiming happiness on my own terms. One evening, we were sitting in a cafe, sipping tea and laughing over some minor mishap at work. I realized something important. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. The betrayal that had once felt like a devastating blow was now a catalyst. It had forced me to reevaluate my relationships, my priorities, and my own strength. I also began reflecting on forgiveness, not for Daniel, but for myself. I had to forgive myself for trusting him, for believing in the promises he made. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or excusing. It meant freeing myself from the weight of anger that threatened to hold me back. By taking control, setting boundaries, and focusing on my own growth, I felt a sense of empowerment I hadn't known before. Betrayal had shaken me, but it hadn't broken me. And as I looked ahead, I realized that my future was mine to define, free from manipulation, lies, and the shadow of someone who didn't deserve me. Have you ever had to set firm boundaries after someone betrayed your trust? How did it change your relationships and sense of self? Life began to feel a little lighter as the weeks passed. The immediate chaos of the engagement party was behind me, and the constant tension in social circles had started to fade. I discovered, slowly but surely, that healing wasn't about rushing. It was about small, deliberate steps toward reclaiming my life. I started spending more time with friends who had been supportive from the start. Even casual hangouts became moments of therapy. Laughter, shared stories, and inside jokes reminding me that life could still be joyful. Laura and I became inseparable, planning weekend hikes, movie nights, and long coffee dates. Each moment reinforced that I wasn't defined by betrayal and that happiness was still possible. One evening, while walking through the park, I ran into a few old friends who had stayed distant after the party. They approached cautiously, unsure how to act. I smiled, invited them to join me, and realized something powerful. People respond to strength. When I didn't let the past dictate my interactions, they treated me differently. Respect replaced pity, and genuine connection began to replace awkward tension. I also started investing time in myself in ways I had neglected. Yoga, journaling, and even a painting class became outlets for processing the emotions that had been pent up since the party. Each brushstroke, each written word, felt like reclaiming pieces of myself that Daniel's betrayal had overshadowed. I was no longer just surviving, I was actively rebuilding. The hardest moments came unexpectedly. A notification would pop up, or I'd see Daniel's name online, and the anger would flare. But rather than letting it consume me, I acknowledged the emotion and let it pass. I reminded myself that I'd already won in a sense, by exposing him, standing my ground, and refusing to let him control my narrative. Then there were small, surprising moments of support from unexpected places. Colleagues who had known about the party reached out with messages of encouragement. Even distant relatives who had seemed indifferent at first checked in. It was a reminder that truth, when handled with courage, invites loyalty and respect from those who matter. One night, as I sat by the window, reflecting on the past weeks, I realized how far I'd come. The pain of betrayal hadn't disappeared, but it no longer had power over me. I had transformed a moment of humiliation into a turning point, a chance to assert my worth, rebuild trust in myself, and nurture relationships that truly mattered. Looking ahead, I knew challenges would arise. There would be reminders of the past, awkward interactions, and lingering memories, but I also knew I had the strength to face them. I wasn't just healing, I was evolving. And the woman staring back at me in the mirror was stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. Have you ever turned a painful experience into an opportunity for growth? What steps did you take to rebuild yourself? By now, the chaos of the engagement party had settled into a sort of quiet aftermath. Daniel had faded from our social circles, and most people had moved on, but the echoes of his betrayal still lingered. It wasn't the loud, dramatic whispers anymore. It was the subtle shifts in conversations, the cautious glances, and the occasional awkward mention of that night. I found myself thinking less about him and more about me, how I had handled everything, how I had stood up for myself, and how I had refused to let humiliation define me. Each reflection brought a sense of pride. I had taken what could have been a devastating story and turned it into a testament to my strength. At work, I noticed a subtle change. People treated me differently, not with pity, but with respect. I realized that my public confrontation had not only exposed his lies, but had also demonstrated that I was someone who didn't tolerate deceit. Colleagues who once seemed indifferent now approached me with genuine warmth. It felt validating in a way I hadn't expected. Socially, I began to enjoy gatherings again, free from the tension that had haunted me for weeks. I laughed more freely, spoke more confidently, and even flirted with the idea of new connections. For the first time since the party, I felt like myself again, vibrant, capable, and unafraid. Yet there were still moments of reflection that cut deep. Seeing couples in love, hearing about engagements, or walking past familiar places tied to Daniel sometimes stirred old wounds. But instead of letting them control me, I treated them as reminders of my resilience. I reminded myself that his betrayal had not broken me. It had reshaped me. One afternoon, Laura and I sat in our favorite cafe, planning a small trip. She smiled and said, "You've come so far. I don't think I've ever seen you this confident." I laughed softly, realizing she was right. Confidence wasn't just about standing tall in front of Daniel. It was about reclaiming every aspect of my life that his betrayal had touched. I also started helping friends navigate their own tricky relationships. Sharing my story gave them courage, and seeing them empowered by it made me feel stronger. It was as if my pain had transformed into a tool to help others protect themselves, stand firm, and trust their instincts. By embracing independence, setting boundaries, and nurturing genuine connections, I began to fully realize the power I had always carried within me. Daniel's betrayal had been painful, but it had forced clarity. It had made me see who deserved a place in my life and who didn't. For the first time in months, I felt complete. Not because of love from another, but because of the love, respect, and strength I had cultivated for myself. And that was more powerful than any engagement, any party, or any lie could ever take away. Have you ever transformed a painful betrayal into a chance to grow stronger and help others? How did it change your outlook on life? Months had passed since the engagement party, yet the memory of that night still lingered, not as pain, but as a turning point. I could look back now and see the entire journey clearly: betrayal, shock, confrontation, and ultimately, self-discovery. That night had been devastating, but it had also been transformative. I had rebuilt my life, piece by piece. I had reconnected with friends who truly mattered, strengthened bonds with family, and nurtured a version of myself that was confident, independent, and unafraid to stand up for what I deserved. Every moment of hurt had been a lesson, and every tear had become a step toward resilience. Daniel had disappeared from my life, as he deserved. The whispers and gossip had faded, replaced by quiet acknowledgement of the truth I had exposed. People no longer questioned my judgment or strength. They respected it. And that respect, most importantly, was something I had cultivated for myself first. I often reflected on the lessons I'd learned. Trust is precious and should never be given blindly. Intuition matters. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And sometimes the most empowering thing you can do is confront the truth head on, even when it feels terrifying. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I realized I felt free. Free from the weight of lies, free from fear of judgment, and free from the shadow of someone who never truly valued me. I smiled, feeling a lightness I hadn't felt in months. The future was uncertain, yes, but it was mine. Every choice, every decision, every path I took from here on out would be on my terms. I even allowed myself to consider love again, but differently. I knew now that love could not exist alongside manipulation or deceit. I would approach it with caution, wisdom, and self respect. I'd been hurt, but I'd also grown. And that growth gave me confidence that my next chapter, whenever it came, would be built on honesty and mutual respect. Looking back at the engagement party now, I realized it wasn't just a night of betrayal, it was a night of awakening. It revealed not only Daniel's true nature, but also my own strength. It forced me to confront pain directly, to speak my truth, and to reclaim my power. That night could have broken me, but instead, it built me. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I felt ready for whatever came next. Life would continue, full of surprises, challenges, and joys. But one thing was certain. I would never let someone else's deceit define me again. I was strong, resilient, and unapologetically me. And that was a victory far greater than any engagement, party, or relationship could ever be. Have you ever faced a life-changing betrayal that ultimately made you stronger? How did it transform you and your outlook on life?